You'll understand when you're older. Nah, I'm older now. And guess what I understand? Alright, I understand y'all were full of crap. A week ago, I found out I was written out of my parents' will. Not like split unequally or small token kind of thing. I mean completely erased. Zilch, nada, nothing. I'm Cole, 34, an ICU nurse in Oregon, and I thought we were a regular, functional-ish family. You know, holiday dinners with too much wine, the occasional passive-aggressive comment, nothing wild. But turns out, I've been the unpaid insurance policy for two people who were only ever investing in one kid, my younger brother Ryan. Let's rewind a bit. Ryan's 30. He's got that lovable screw-up energy people confuse with charm. You know, the type job hopper, always finding himself constantly behind on rent. But everyone says he's got potential. Meanwhile, I was the rock, the responsible one. Graduated nursing school early, paid off my loans, bought my own place, helped with bills when mom had surgery, sent money when dad's car got towed. I never bragged, just did it, because I thought, that's what family does. Yeah, screw that. It started with a weird comment over dinner 2 months ago. We were having tacos at mom's place. She looked at me and said, "It's such a relief knowing we won't have to worry about you." And I said, kinda laughing, "I hope that means you're leaving Ryan your bills and me the dog." She didn't laugh. Fast forward to last weekend. I came over to help sort through some documents. Dad had knee surgery recently and asked if I could help scan some forms. While digging through a folder, I found a draft of their will, yes, literally labeled final copy for attorney. Guess whose name wasn't in it? Not mine. Everything, and I mean everything, was going to Ryan. The house, their savings, Dad's coin collection, Mom's jewelry, even that damn photo album I made when I was in middle school for her birthday. I stared at the pages, waiting for the punchline. When Mom walked back in, I held up the will and asked, "Hey, is this real?" She didn't even flinch. "Oh, yeah, we just figured it made the most sense. Ryan needs more support than you do." That was it. No apology, no hesitation, just this casual, airbrushed explanation, like she was talking about switching to almond milk. I was stunned. I asked, so everything I did, everything I gave up meant nothing. And she had the nerve to go, "Cole, you're doing fine. You'll be okay." That's when something broke in me, and I mean that in the best possible way. I stopped being the helper, the fixer, the fallback plan. I walked out without another word, went home, poured myself a whiskey, stared at the wall, and started thinking. What if I stopped paying the difference in their mortgage? What if I stopped covering Ryan's health insurance? What if I stopped being the guy they leaned on every time life got messy? I didn't text, I didn't call, I let the silence speak. For the next 2 weeks, I ghosted them not out of spite, but survival. And wouldn't you know it, the minute the bills hit, the texts came flooding in. "Cole, the electric's due, can you take care of it? Are you free this weekend to help Ryan figure out his taxes? We're short on groceries this month. You think you could?" I didn't even reply. Then Ryan called. "Dude, what's up with you moms stressing? Just pay the rent like always. Why are you acting like this?" Like always. Like it's normal for me to be their financial backbone while getting emotionally kicked in the ribs. I finally texted back, "Figure it out. Man, I'm done." He didn't get it. Of course he didn't. He's never had to stand on his own. Mom left a voicemail the next day. "Cole, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this is hurting everyone. Ryan's doing his best. You're punishing us for loving you differently. WTF? Loving me differently is a hell of a spin on completely ignoring your oldest child unless something breaks." I sat there, just boiling, remembering every time I pulled money from savings to cover their crap, every shift I picked up to make sure their lights stayed on, and now I'm the villain because I said no. That's when I started writing things down, not for revenge, just clarity. I opened a blank doc titled "Stuff They Don't Know I Paid For." Their busted roof leak in 2019, $1,700. Ryan's ER bill from that dumb dirt bike accident, $2,300. Groceries during COVID, lockdown when they were too scared to go out, $560. Dad's expired registration fines, $400. Mom's surprise birthday trip to the coast, Ryan got the credit for planning that, $900. It added up fast, not just in money, but in all the times I chose them over myself. And now they act like I'm the one abandoning them. It all came to a head last Friday. I was off work, meal prepping, phone on Do Not Disturb, when someone started pounding on my door like they were about to break it down. I opened it, already knowing. There stood Mom, red-eyed, Dad behind her, silent, Ryan leaning on the porch railing like this was some intervention. "We need to talk," Mom said. I folded my arms. "I bet you do. We're family," she said. "Families don't give up on each other." "Oh, now we're family," I raised an eyebrow. "Where was that energy when you left me out of your future completely?" She blinked. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "Nah," I said. "I'm finally seeing it for what it is." Then I shut the door. And for the first time in a long damn time, I didn't feel guilty. Just free. It's wild how fast people switch up when you stop being useful. The very next morning, I got a text from Dad, short and stiff like always. "We need to talk. This has gone too far. Too far." Right, because me saying no is somehow more offensive than them cutting me out of everything. Still, I didn't reply. I poured my coffee, fed the cat, and sat down at my kitchen table like I didn't have a front row seat to my own family meltdown. Then Ryan blew up my phone. First text, "Bro, seriously, you're gonna let Mom cry herself sick over this." Second text, "What's wrong with you lately?" Third, "You can't keep ghosting us. Man, just pay the rent and let's talk like grown-ups." I didn't respond to any of it. Because that's what they wanted, pull me back in with guilt. Reframe everything so I look like the bad guy. And boom, I'm back on the hook. Nah, not this time. An hour later, Aunt Kelsey called. That was unexpected. She's Mom's older sister. Sweet lady, bit of a Facebook oversharer, but she always treated me with more kindness than most. We hadn't spoken in months. "Hey, Cole," she said, soft and awkward, "I just got off the phone with your mom. She's upset. Said you're refusing to help with the house. Here we go." I let out a slow breath. Did she also say they wrote me out of their will completely? There was silence. "No," she said. "Thought so." Another pause. "Cole, is that true?" "Yup. Found the will while helping them sort papers. Everything house, money. Even Grandma's ring is going to Ryan. Every last thing." More silence. "Wow," she finally said, I didn't know. Neither did I. Until last week." She didn't try to justify it. Just said, "That's really messed up. I'm so sorry." And you know what? That was the first real apology I'd heard from anyone in that family. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. "Mom." "How dare you drag Kelsey into this?" LMAO. I didn't even have to try. They did that all by themselves by lying to her first. I texted back one line. "If you didn't want people to know what you did, maybe don't do it." That shut her up. For now, the next 2 days were quiet. Suspiciously quiet. No texts, no calls, no flying monkeys from the extended family. I thought maybe they were finally processing it all. Maybe they were starting to get it. Ha! I was wrong. Sunday afternoon, I came back from Trader Joe's and there was a note taped to my door. It wasn't in an envelope, just flapping there like a sad little threat. It said, "You're still family. This doesn't have to be permanent. Stop acting like a child and come talk to us before it's too late." Too late for what? My slice of the will I never had. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the bin. Not dramatically, not angrily. Just done. Then came Monday. I was in the break room at work, microwaving leftover curry, when my phone lit up with a notification. Ryan, again? This time, so you're just gonna ghost your family forever. Cool. Don't come crawling back when it all blows up in your face. Wow, that escalated. I replied, I'm not crawling back anywhere. Dude, I walked away. Big difference. He hit back fast. Keep telling yourself that. When mom and dad lose the house, it's on you. I stared at the screen. That's what they really believed, that I was responsible for their survival, like it was my duty to keep their heads above water after they decided I wasn't worth a mention in their estate. It was like being erased and blamed at the same time. What really got me, though, there was zero ownership from Ryan. No self-awareness, just deflection, like always. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every little memory that should have been a red flag. Like the time I got accepted into nursing school out of state, and mom said, but what about Ryan? He still needs you around. Or when I bought my first car and dad said, don't tell your brother how much you spent, he'll feel bad. Or last year, when Ryan crashed his piece of crap truck and I paid to fix it quietly, just so my parents wouldn't stress. They never asked how I was managing. Never noticed I skipped vacations, postponed buying a house, lived paycheck to paycheck despite a solid job all so they could keep pretending Ryan was just a little behind. Nah, he wasn't behind. He just never had to walk. Tuesday morning, I got the message I knew was coming. It was from Dad. We're going to lose the house. The mortgage is past due. I don't know what else to do. No, please, no apology, just a statement, like I'm the damn bank. Then another one 5 minutes later from Mom. If you care at all, you'll help. This isn't who you are. Funny, because who I am apparently isn't worth including in their future. Right? So I replied, I cared for 10 years while you ignored it. Let Ryan figure it out. You picked him. And for the first time in forever, I turned my phone off for the rest of the day and didn't feel bad about it. The fallout started slow. Aunt Kelsey messaged me again, said Mom called crying about losing the house, trying to rally sympathy. I told her straight. They had a choice. They made it. I'm just finally making mine. Then my cousin Josh texted, hey, not to pry, but what's going on with your folks? My mom's been ranting, so I told him too. No drama, no hate, just facts. And like dominoes, the narrative started cracking. People outside the core bubble were finally seeing what I'd lived with my whole damn life. It was weird, kind of liberating, kind of depressing. Then Friday came, and they showed up at my apartment. Yup, my parents and Ryan. Knocking like they hadn't spent a decade training me to expect the bare minimum. I didn't even flinch. Didn't answer at first, just stood in my kitchen, drinking water and listening to them knock, then knock louder, then start calling out my name like it was an emergency. I finally opened the door. Not because I wanted to talk, I just wanted to look them in the face when I told them no. And man, the look on Mom's face, she looked shocked, offended. Like I was the one who betrayed them. Cole, she said, stepping forward, we need to talk, please. I didn't move. Go ahead. Inside. Nah, porch is fine. Dad sighed. Son, this isn't how families handle things. Yeah, I said. Well, families don't usually cut each other out of their wills either. Ryan leaned against the railing like some smug consultant. It's not that serious, man. I looked him dead in the eye. You ever paid a mortgage? Or a hospital bill? Or sat up at 2 a.m. trying to figure out how to stretch $47 across 10 days for groceries while sending money home to people who forgot your birthday? He didn't answer, just glanced at Mom like, fix this. But she didn't have a fix, because the truth was out now. And for once, I wasn't the one squirming. Dad broke the silence first. Cole, you've made your point. Okay, but this is real now. The bank's threatening foreclosure. You want us to lose the house? I stared at him, deadpan. You already lost the son who paid for it. His face twitched, but he didn't argue. And Ryan still thought he could smooth talk his way through this? Look, bro, let's just squash this. You're mad. I get it. They messed up, but you're seriously going to stand here and let your family go under over a technicality? A technicality? I barked a short, bitter laugh. You mean the will? The part where I get nothing. The part where I find out after paying for everything for years that I wasn't even considered. You don't need the money, Ryan shot back, exasperated. You're stable. You've got your own place. You've always been fine. And you've always been the problem, I snapped. But somehow I'm the one expected to fix it. Ryan rolled his eyes, but for the first time, there was a flicker of panic underneath it. Mom, of course, stepped in with her go-to guilt trip. This isn't who you are. Cole, you've always been kind, generous. I raised you to care about family. No, I said, you raised me to carry the family. That shut her up. I watched her lips tighten. She was trying to control the moment, trying to steer it back to her narrative, but the wheels were off. They always depended on me playing the role the fixer, the dependable one, the adult, but not today. The next day, I called the bank just to ask some questions. I wasn't helping them, don't get it twisted, but I wanted to confirm the numbers, the missed payments, the timeline. I wanted to know what hole they were in, because something felt off. And sure enough, turns out Ryan had taken out a home equity line of credit a year ago, in Dad's name, for renovations, except the house looked exactly the same. Still had the busted fence, same creaky porch, same peeling shutters. Where did that money go? You already know. Crypto, freaking crypto. Some garbage altcoin pump and dump scheme his buddy on Reddit had hyped. $48,000. Gone. Flushed. They never told me. Not once. And now they were drowning and expecting me to bail them out of a flood I didn't cause, didn't know about, and sure as hell didn't agree to. I didn't sleep that night, not out of anxiety, out of anger, not just for what they did, but for how casually they assumed I'd still pick up the pieces. 2 days later, I got a message from Aunt Kelsey again. Just heard about the loan. Holy are you okay? I told her the truth. I'm not shocked anymore. I'm just done. She called me that night, not to convince me to change my mind, but to say she was proud of me, that she always saw the imbalance but didn't know how bad it was until now. She even offered to let my parents stay with her if they got evicted on one condition. She said, they come clean to the whole family first, and that's when it hit me. It wasn't just about the money, or the will, or the years of unequal treatment. It was about truth. I'd been living a quiet version of it, shouldering burdens in silence, while they curated a version of events where Ryan was the sweet boy and I was just fine. Time to burn that fake story to the ground. So I wrote an email. I sent it to the whole family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even my godfather in Arizona. Subject line, just so everyone knows. It read, "Hey everyone, I've been quiet for a long time, but I think you all deserve to know what's really going on. A week ago, I found out that Mom and Dad's will leaves everything to Ryan. Not 60/40ths, not with conditions, just everything. I've been helping pay their mortgage, covering Ryan's emergencies, and sending money for years. I never asked for recognition, but finding out I was cut out completely, that broke something. On top of that, Ryan took out a $48K line of credit in Dad's name last year and lost it in crypto. Now the bank's coming for the house. I've been asked to be the bigger person again, but I'm done playing that role. If they end up homeless, that's not on me. That's the result of decades of choices, none of which I made. I'm not looking for pity. I just want the truth out there. Cole. I stared at it for a long second before hitting send. Then I sat back and waited for the fallout. Within a day, the responses started. Some were shocked. Some said they always suspected something was off. A few apologized for things they didn't even realize they'd done. And then came the group texts. Family group chat exploded like a grenade. Kelsey, I had no idea. I'm disgusted. Uncle Mike, how the hell did you let Ryan do that? Cousin Aaron, wait. Cole paid the mortgage since when? Mom didn't say a word publicly. But she called me that night. She was crying again. Cole, I can't believe you humiliated us like that. I didn't even flinch. You're not humiliated. You're exposed. She went silent. Then, quieter. You have no idea what this is doing to us. I held the phone against my ear for a beat, then answered. No, I know exactly what it's doing. It's just the first time you've had to face it. She didn't cry louder. She didn't scream. She just hung up. 2 days later, Ryan called. Dude, he said, voice flat. You blew everything up. What do you even get out of this? Peace, I said, which you clearly don't have. He laughed bitter and brittle. You think you're better than me now? I don't have to think it. I said, I just have to look at our lives. That pissed him off, but he didn't fight back, because now the whole family knew. There was no more covering it up. No more, he said. She said. Just receipts, and a silent house about to be foreclosed. Funny thing is, I started sleeping better. Like, deep sleep. No nightmares. No anxiety dreams about missing rent or forgetting to send money. Just rest. I started working out again, cooking real meals, reading. It was like I had all this extra energy now that I wasn't being emotionally mugged every week. I even looked into switching careers, maybe teaching, or moving into nurse leadership, something with more boundaries. And then, 1 week later, I got a letter in the mail. Certified, signed, from a lawyer. Mom and Dad were trying to reverse the will. Suddenly, they wanted to make things right. They'd filed paperwork to split things evenly between me and Ryan. How noble. Except, it was too late. I didn't want it anymore. I'd rather earn everything than accept leftovers from people who only give when they're exposed. They really thought a lawyer's letter would fix everything. That after years of being treated like the family debit card, they could just reverse a few signatures and I'd come crawling back. Nope. I didn't even open the envelope right away. It sat on my counter for 3 days like a dead fly under glass. I walked past it while brewing coffee. Watched the cat knock it off the table twice. Still didn't touch it, because I already knew what it said. Some forced apology, a legal correction, some line about ensuring fairness now that emotions have settled. Too little, too late, too fake. On the 4th night, I finally opened it just to confirm. It was exactly what I expected. Mom and Dad, through a family lawyer, were amending the will to include me equally so that no child feels unloved. No mention of what they'd done. No acknowledgement of the debt I'd carried or the years of being sidelined. Just a neat legal band-aid with a thin coat of fake sentiment. And get this, they wanted me to sign a document agreeing to drop any potential claims or accusations I'd made in public channels. That was the cherry on top. They didn't reverse the will because they were sorry. They did it to shut me up. I didn't sign. I sent it back, blank. Then came the group text. From Mom, we're glad to share that we've updated the estate to reflect both our sons equally. We hope this brings peace and resolution to recent misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? Like I accidentally tripped and face-planted into decades of neglect. Like they forgot to mention me in the will the same way you forget to buy milk at the store. Cousin Aaron replied with a single thumbs down emoji. Uncle Mike didn't respond, but I got a private message from him an hour later. Too little, too late. They only care about appearances. Damn right. The following weekend, I ran into Ryan at a gas station. First time seeing him in person since that front porch showdown, he looked rough. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing the same hoodie from last time, but this time it was stained with something. Could have been mustard, could have been shame. He spotted me while I was filling my tank. Walked over, hands in his pockets, eyes flicking side to side like he was still deciding whether to talk. Hey, he muttered. I nodded once. Didn't say anything. I didn't know they were going to do that. He said, the will, the whole thing. I raised an eyebrow. Seriously, he shrugged. They told me a while ago that it'd go to me, but I didn't think it'd be just me. I figured they'd split it later. Like, when things were better. When you got your life together, you mean I said, he looked away. I didn't ask for it. Cole, no, but you didn't say no either. He was quiet for a beat. Then I messed up. With the crypto thing. With a lot. You think? Another silence. Then Mom's been losing it. She's crying like every day. Dad's barely talking. I didn't react because I've been crying in silence for years. Not one person noticed then. I'm not saying you should forgive them, he added quickly. I don't know, thought you should know they're not okay. I looked him in the eye. Good. That landed harder than I expected. He flinched. Damn, bro. No, I said. Calm but flat. Don't bro me. You stood by while they erased me. Benefited from it. Mocked me when I pulled away. And now you want to pass the guilt off like a hot potato because it's too heavy to hold. Screw that. He stared down at his shoes. Look, he said, I know you hate me, and maybe I deserve that, but we're still brothers. No, Ryan, I said, we were raised under the same roof. That doesn't make us brothers. I got in my car, shut the door, and left. Aunt Kelsey called me again a few days later. She was upset. Not at me, just exhausted. They're spinning the story now, she said, telling people you went off the rails, that you're holding a grudge over nothing, trying to protect Ryan from your resentment. It's all damage control. I shouldn't have been surprised, but still it hit like a punch. Why can't they just own it? I asked. Because they've never had to, she replied. You were always the one who bent, who gave in, who cleaned up the messes. Not anymore. I know, she said, and her voice broke a little. That's why they're panicking. I thanked her, told her she didn't owe me anything, that I appreciated her being the only one who hadn't tried to gaslight me into submission. She asked if I was okay. And for the first time in a while, I told the truth. I'm getting there. Weeks passed. Spring turned into summer. And the silence held. No more texts, no more knocks, no more begging letters in my mailbox. The bank moved on the house. Ryan tried to apply for assistance, but got denied. Dad couldn't refinance because his credit was shot. They sold the house at a loss. Moved into some crumbling duplex near the edge of town. Aunt Kelsey told me they were sharing a car and fighting daily. I didn't cheer, didn't feel vindicated. Just quiet, like I'd finally turned the last page on a book that dragged on too long. I deleted the old voicemails, blocked Ryan's number, took my parents out of my emergency contact list at work. It wasn't dramatic, it was peaceful. And then I got the birthday card. It came 2 weeks late. No return address, just a plain white envelope with my name on it. Inside was a card, blue, generic, probably from a dollar store. Inside, scrawled in Dad's shaky handwriting. Happy birthday, Cole. Hope you're well. We miss you. Dad. That was it. No, we're sorry. No, we were wrong. Just this limp, sad gesture, too little and way too late. I tossed it in a drawer. Didn't text back. Didn't even sigh. Because here's the truth they'll never understand. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm the escape artist. I walked out of a burning house before it collapsed on me. They're still inside, wondering why it's so hard to breathe. The day I realized I hadn't thought about them in over a week, I just stood there in my kitchen, stunned. Not in a dramatic way, not with tears or some movie score epiphany, just a moment of silence that felt different. Like a muscle had unclenched after being tight for years. I'd been so used to the constant low buzz of obligation, the mental checklist. Did I call mom back? Did I send dad money for meds? Did Ryan screw up again? But now, silence. No messages, no updates, no demands. It was beautiful. I was sitting outside a cafe downtown when I ran into AmITheA. We hadn't seen each other since college. She'd been a friend of a friend art major, curly hair, energy like a double espresso, the kind of person who remembered birthdays and always asked if you were really okay. She recognized me first. Cole holy *T, is that you? I looked up from my coffee, blinked twice. Liv, we hugged, talked, laughed. It was easy. She asked what I'd been up to and I gave her the cliff notes. Left nursing, started consulting, got my life back. She said I looked lighter. You used to look so tense all the time, she said, like you were waiting for the sky to fall. I chuckled. That was probably accurate. We ended up talking for 2 hours about life, work, family. Her dad had passed, her mom had remarried, and she'd cut off her toxic older sister a year ago. That's the thing they never tell you, she said. You grew up thinking family is sacred. Turns out, it's a choice. That stuck with me. Not like a revelation, but like a confirmation. Something I knew in my bones, finally said out loud. That night, I went home and sat on my balcony, watching the city breathe under a blue-black sky. And I made a list, not a to-do list. A don't-do list. Don't respond to guilt texts. Don't feel bad for choosing peace. Don't explain myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. Don't go back. I hung it on my fridge. A quiet little promise to myself. About a month later, I got an email from Ryan. Not a wall of text, not a guilt trip, just a few lines. Cole, they moved mom to urgent care last night. Stress-related complications. Just thought you should know. Ryan. I stared at it for a while. Not gonna lie, something flickered in my chest. Old reflexes. That ache you get when you still remember what it was like to be needed. But I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care. Because I do care. That's the problem. I cared too long, cared past the point of bleeding. And caring doesn't mean walking into a burning building just because someone you love lit the match. The next weekend, AmITheA and I grabbed dinner. It turned into drinks, then into sitting in her car, music low, city lights bouncing off the windshield as we talked about parents, expectations, disappointment. Do you think people like that ever get it? I asked. She sipped her drink. No. I think some people confuse needing you with loving you. That hit like a freight train. I used to think if I was helpful enough, they'd see me. I said, like really see me. Did they? I paused, only when I disappeared. She reached out, squeezed my hand. We didn't kiss, didn't need to. Sometimes the most intimate thing is just sitting in the silence with someone who finally gets it. A few weeks later, I heard through the grapevine that my parents sold most of their stuff. Furniture, jewelry, even some of Dad's old golf gear, trying to stay afloat. They hadn't spoken to me since the birthday card. No, we're sorry. No, how are you? Just radio silence, which honestly was fine. Because by then, I wasn't checking my phone hoping for closure. I already had it. It wasn't a big dramatic moment. It was realizing that I didn't flinch when their names popped up in conversation. That I could talk about the past without my throat tightening. That I could laugh again without guilt attached. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Morales. Cool older guy. Wore cardigans that somehow didn't look dorky. I told him the whole story over a few sessions. He just nodded, asked good questions. Then one day, after I'd finished telling him about the will, the confrontation, the fallout, he leaned back and said, "So what does justice look like to you now?" I had no answer. He let that hang in the air. Because justice had always looked like an apology, an admission. A rewriting of the past, yeah, but now justice was freedom. Living well, saying no without guilt. Building my own life with the space they never gave me. One night, while cleaning, I found the old folder from when I first saw the will. The moment everything cracked, I flipped through it one last time, saw my name missing, clear as day. Then I fed it to my shredder, page by page. Each one sounded like a sigh of release, and then something weird happened. Mom emailed, not a forward, not a prayer chain or a passive-aggressive guilt grenade. Just a short message. "Cole, I've been thinking a lot. I still don't understand everything, but I do know I hurt you. I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted to say I'm sorry. Mom." I stared at it for a long time. Was it perfect? No. Did it undo everything? Also no, but it was the first time she'd used the word sorry. No demands, no deflection, just a simple sentence that took her 30 years too long to say. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because I was healing, and sometimes silence is the kindest boundary. A month later, Olivia and I were walking through a farmer's market. She grabbed my arm and pointed, "Hey, isn't that your mom?" Sure enough, there she was half a block away, hair grayer than I remembered, eyes smaller, like someone who'd been carrying too much for too long. She didn't see me. We ducked behind a booth selling lavender soap. I could have walked up, could have said hi, but I didn't because some meetings belong to the past, and not all reunions are meant to happen. We just watched her walk away, clutching a shopping bag like it was the last thing keeping her grounded, and in that moment, I didn't feel rage. Just distance, the good kind. A year ago, I would have chased her. If I'd seen my mom walking through that market last year, frail, tired, quieter, I would have run after her, said something, asked something, begged for a moment that felt real. But that day, I let her walk away, and it wasn't cold. It wasn't heartless. It was peaceful. Because I wasn't trying to fix what broke anymore. I was finally letting it stay broken. That summer, Olivia and I moved in together. Nothing crazy, just a clean little apartment above a bookstore. White walls, decent kitchen, more light than we knew what to do with, and quiet. That word kept coming up in my life lately. Not emptiness, not loneliness. Just quiet. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I was living inside a constant negotiation. No guilt tripping, no sudden emergencies, no messages from Ryan with subject lines like "you up" or "need $500 ASAP." Just slow mornings. Music in the background, knowing no one was waiting to drop a crisis on me. Freedom didn't look like fireworks or plane tickets to Bali. It looked like a coffee pot bubbling while the cat pawed at the window. It looked like knowing I owed no one an explanation for my peace. Ryan tried one last Hail Mary. He showed up. I'd just gotten home from work when I saw him at the bottom of the stairs leaning against the mailbox like he had every right to be there. "Cole," he called out. I froze, took a breath. Then slowly walked down to meet him. "Not a good idea," I said calmly. He held up both hands. I just want to talk. No. Dude, come on, just 5 minutes. I said no. Ryan. He stepped forward, voice rising. I'm not trying to fight. I just shut. Man, I'm drowning. I got no job, no car, no asterisk include what I'm doing. Not my problem. I said, flat. He blinked like I slapped him. You used to care? I used to get manipulated. I corrected. Big difference. His shoulders slumped. Say, I'm not asking for money. Good, I said, because I don't give money to people who would have watched me get erased. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he swallowed hard. They're not doing well, he muttered. Mom's memory's slipping. Dad's barely talking. I'm aware. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I stared at him. It used to. He sniffed, wiped his nose with his sleeve. So that's it. No, I said, that's freedom. Then I walked back upstairs and closed the door. Didn't feel guilty. Didn't even look out the window to watch him leave. My therapist once said, you don't have to be angry forever to know you were mistreated. It stuck, because for a while, anger was all I had. That white-hot, tight-throated fire that pushed me to finally say no, but now I didn't need the fire. I had something better, distance. I could remember the bad stuff without reliving it. I could hear their names without twitching. I could tell the story without spiraling. 6 months later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Voicemail, it was Aunt Kelsey. Hey Cole, I know things are complicated, but I thought you should know your dad passed away last night. Heart failure. It was quick. Quiet. I'm not calling to drag you back in. I just didn't want you to hear it from someone random. She paused. He never stopped asking about you. I think he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Click. I stood there in my kitchen, felt my heartbeat thud once, twice, and then stillness. I didn't cry. Didn't rage. I sat down, made a cup of tea, texted Olivia. Hey, just got some news. We'll explain later. Love you. Because here's what I realized in that moment. Closure isn't always a conversation. Sometimes, closure is choosing not to go back. They held a small service. Private, I didn't go. Aunt Kelsey sent me a photo of the flowers and a short note. I told them you got a new life now. I hope that's true. I replied, it is. I changed my number, updated my emergency contact to Olivia, filed paperwork to legally block any financial tie to my parents' estate in case Ryan tried anything shady. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I just wanted a clean slate, so I built one. Started volunteering twice a month at a crisis hotline. It felt good helping people who felt invisible, people I knew all too well. Sometimes, I'd talk to a caller who reminded me of myself 10 years ago. Angry, confused, tired, I never gave them advice. I just listened, because sometimes that's what we need more than anything. To be heard, to be seen. One afternoon, Olivia found an old photo of me and Ryan as kids. We were maybe 7 and 10, both in superhero costumes, smiling like idiots. Was that before things got bad? She asked gently. I nodded. Do you miss him? She asked. I thought for a long second. I miss the version of him that could have existed. She understood. Didn't push, just leaned against me while we watched the sun fall behind the city. A year passed, then 2. And one random Thursday afternoon, I walked by a park and saw a little boy helping his dad fly a kite. The wind caught it just right, and the kid shrieked with joy, jumping up and down as the kite soared. His dad didn't check his phone, didn't yell, just smiled and held the spool steady. And something in me cracked wide open. Not in a sad way, in a future way. Because I realized I could be that. I could be the man who breaks the pattern. Who gives without strings, loves without scorekeeping, shows up and means it. I don't need to be a father to do that. I can be that person every day, to friends, to Olivia, to strangers who never got what they needed. That's the real revenge, isn't it? Not yelling, not lawsuits, not slamming doors. Just becoming someone they never imagined you could be. Free. So if you're still wondering, did I go too far? Did I cut too deep? Should I have forgiven, or fixed, or folded? Here's my answer. I healed. I walked away, and I built something better. That's not cruelty. That's courage. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Story 2. They laughed at me over dinner again. Seriously, Jamie, are you still writing those little code things in your basement? My older sister sneered, pushing aside her designer salad like the entire evening bored her. Dad snorted. You should apply somewhere real. Be a man for once. At least your sister's going places. I sat there, 29 years old, chewing my roast chicken in silence as my family roasted me alive. They didn't know. They had no clue that the company Amanda was interviewing for on Monday, her big career move, as she kept calling it, was mine. She was walking into my empire, built from scratch while they dismissed me as a recluse. It started with one insult too many. Every family dinner at my parents' sleek uptown apartment felt like a business meeting where I was the unpaid intern. Amanda, 32, was the crown jewel and MBA grad turned consultant who never shut up about quarterly returns and synergy. Mom, always dressed like she was headed to a gala, clinked her wine glass. Amanda's got an interview with Nexoratech regional director. It's a 6-figure offer. Minimum. Dad beamed. That's what ambition looks like. Jamie. I nodded, swallowing the sting. Nexoratech. The name echoed like thunder in my chest. They didn't know I owned it. Under the alias J. Ray, I had quietly acquired the then flailing startup 4 years ago, rebuilt it, and launched it into the stratosphere. Revenue tripled, our AI division made headlines, and Forbes dubbed us Silicon Valley's quiet supernova. They never connected the dots. They never asked. I left dinner early, mumbling something about an early morning meeting. Amanda waved me off with a wink. Don't code too hard, little bro. The elevator doors shut and I finally exhaled. Back at my condo, the city stretched out below me like a glowing map of possibility. I sank into my chair and pulled up my company's dashboard. Nexoratech's numbers looked good. Very good. Tomorrow, Amanda would walk into our downtown headquarters, not knowing her little brother, her family's punchline, was the CEO. The thought should have thrilled me. Instead, my stomach twisted. I thought of Grandpa Tom. He used to say, the quiet ones build cathedrals while the loud ones build facades. He was the only one who ever believed in me. He taught me to solder wires, to troubleshoot logic errors, to think like a builder. He died just after I launched my second software tool. He never saw what I'd become. But I carry his voice with me every day. I picked up the photo of us, me, 12 years old, holding up my first completed script like it was gold. Tomorrow, I said to his picture, I show them who I am. The next morning, I arrived early. My nameplate sat proudly on the glass door, Julian Ray, CEO. Clara, my chief strategy officer and the closest thing I had to a best friend, was already in the conference room. She knew everything. You sure you want to do this? She asked, sipping her black coffee. She's applying to lead my own regional strategy. I said, she spent last night mocking me for coding. I think I deserve this. Clara raised an eyebrow. Just don't go full Bond villain. I smirked, noted. An hour later, Amanda arrived. She didn't recognize me through the glass. I watched her chat with our receptionist, then sit in the waiting area beneath the framed magazine cover featuring me, face blurred and captioned Nexora's mysterious CEO disrupts the industry. Still didn't register? Clara let her in. Miss Callahan, the CEO will be with you shortly. Amanda stood, cool and composed, portfolio in hand. Then I walked in, her jaw dropped. Julian, welcome to Nexora, I said, sliding into the CEO chair. Let's discuss your application. She blinked, frozen. You're the CEO? She finally stammered. For 4 years, I let her recover as I flipped through her resume. Impressive buzzwords, familiar numbers, too familiar. I paused. One of her accomplishments listed a 2021 product launch that mirrored one of our internal beta projects, something only an insider could have known. I glanced at Clara, who caught my look. We'd been tightening data access protocols for months. Someone was leaking. You've been consulting for VectorPoint, right? I asked. Amanda nodded cautiously. Yes, their innovation department. Clara stepped forward with a file. We cross-referenced your past campaign with our IP logs, she said, her tone suddenly cold. You used Nexora's prototype in your pitch deck. Amanda went pale. It was just a model. I didn't know it was. You did, I said. You just didn't know who owned it. The silence stretched like elastic. Then Amanda said the one thing I didn't expect. Julian, I'm sorry. Not defensive, not cruel. Just real, and for the first time in years, I saw my sister stripped of arrogance, frightened, vulnerable. I didn't think you'd make it, she added quietly. None of us did. That's on us. I stared at her, the years of dismissal boiling behind my ribs, the jokes, the way Dad always shut me down, the way Mom only called when her iPad glitched. And still, I heard Grandpa's voice. Quiet ones build cathedrals. I didn't hire her. But I didn't ruin her either. Instead, I offered a warning. You're brilliant, Amanda, but if you ever touch what's mine again, I won't be kind. She nodded and left, and when the door closed, I finally exhaled. Clara raised an eyebrow. You okay? I don't know. Want to talk about it? Not yet. That night, I drove past my parents' house. Lights on. Dinner in progress. Probably another toast to Amanda's career. Another passive-aggressive jab about my loner lifestyle. They wouldn't believe it even now, but I didn't stop. I turned away and drove toward Nexora's campus instead, where the lab lights burned bright and our AI team was testing something truly world-changing. I belonged there. Not in dining rooms filled with scorn, but in boardrooms filled with innovation. Let them talk. I'd keep building. After Amanda walked out of my office, the silence hung like thick smoke. I thought I'd feel victorious, powerful, even, but all I felt was empty. I didn't want to crush her. But she'd crossed a line, and now that line had my full attention. Back in my condo that night, the view from the 41st floor looked less like a reward and more like a wall. A quiet barrier between me and the family I'd always tried to impress. Mom had texted, "Heard you had a job offer. Jamie, finally taking our advice." I didn't reply. She still had no idea. They still thought I was jobless Jamie Tinkerer, dreamer, the weird one in the basement. Even after Amanda's interview, no one called to ask about it, not even her. I leaned back on the couch, exhausted. Then Clara called, "Julian, you need to see this." We met at the Nexora Tech Lab, way past business hours. She looked grim. I dug deeper into Amanda's files from VectorPoint. She handed me a tablet. Lines of code blinked across the screen. My college-era syntax, my custom-built compiler signatures, my fingerprints. "You see it, right?" she asked. "Yeah, This is my legacy framework. More than that, she said, tapping another screen. They've been selling it? My heart sank. Amanda hadn't just reused a prototype in her deck, she'd helped commercialize my code. Behind closed doors, without realizing it belonged to me. It wasn't just her, either. There was someone else, someone who gave her access. A leak from the inside. I spent the next 72 hours doing what I do best, digging. Every server log, every system entry point, I tracked access requests, login histories, timestamp anomalies. Clara brought in Miguel, our cybersecurity lead, to assist. 3 names came up. Amanda, someone from VectorPoint's engineering team, and Jacob, my childhood friend. My CTO? It didn't make sense. Jacob and I built Nexora together. We met in high school robotics club. He was the first person who took my coding seriously. We pulled all-nighters in Grandpa's garage, debugging processors and writing firmware like it was poetry. He was the first person I hired. He'd been with me every step of the way. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, but the access logs didn't lie. He'd been feeding snippets of my personal archive, old scripts, experimental AI blueprints to someone outside. Some of it ended up in VectorPoint's projects. I closed my laptop, my hands shaking. The betrayal was personal, deeper than Amanda's mocking smile. This hurt. I confronted him that Friday morning. Clara sat beside me, silent but stern. Jacob stood across the conference table, arms crossed, looking like the ground had vanished beneath him. I need you to tell me the truth. I said, did you give Amanda access to the legacy files? His eyes twitched. Then he sighed. She didn't know it was yours. She thought it was just part of Nexora's library. And what's your excuse? He rubbed his temple, looking anywhere but at me. I thought she could help us. I thought merging with VectorPoint was the future. Amanda's got influence. She said if we collaborated, it could fast-track our international expansion. You thought selling my private work to a competitor was collaboration? My voice cracked, the fury barely restrained. He didn't answer. I looked at Clara. She nodded. I turned back to Jacob. My oldest friend, you're suspended, effective immediately. That night, I didn't go home. I drove aimless. City lights turned to suburbs. Suburbs blurred into countryside. Finally, at a quiet old gas station that hadn't been remodeled since 1985, I stopped, sat on the hood of my car, breathed, thought about Grandpa. I thought about that summer we built our first drone together, duct tape holding its arms in place. He told me then, trust is your most expensive tool. Lose it, and nothing else works. Jacob didn't just break trust, he sold it. Back at Nexora, fallout came fast. Amanda's deal with VectorPoint imploded. I sent them a cease and desist backed by our IP lawyers. They backed off immediately, but Amanda's reputation was dented. She messaged me the next day. I didn't know. I never meant to hurt you. Please believe that. I didn't respond. She'd made her choices, family or not. But I wasn't done cleaning house. Clara brought me new data proof that Jacob had met with a VectorPoint investor at least twice over the past quarter. Quiet dinners, no emails, just calendar gaps and credit card pings. When I asked him about it, he resigned, effective that day. No apology, just silence. The board tried to panic. Nexora's CTO gone. Amanda linked to stolen IP. Whispers began. Clara shut them down. One meeting, one report, one graph showing year-over-year growth. We didn't need Jacob. We'd never needed Amanda. And I was no longer afraid to lead from the front. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't hiding behind the JM Ray mask. I was Julian Callahan, CEO, builder, and a coder. 2 weeks later, I saw Mom at a charity brunch. She was dressed as always classic pearls, a cashmere shawl over her shoulders. She barely registered my presence until a woman leaned over and whispered in her ear. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to her drink. She didn't say a word, but I noticed her phone, open to an article. Julian Callahan, the man behind Nexoratech's meteoric rise. The profile photo was me. No more blurred faces, no more aliases. She knew now, and she said nothing. That night, Amanda texted again, "Dinner just us, no parents, no resumes, just truth." I stared at it for a while. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. 1 month after Jacob's exit, Clara officially became my CTO. Miguel led security. We launched Project Vega, our next-gen AI solution for healthcare diagnostics. The beta testing results were so promising, the World Health Organization asked to collaborate. And I finally felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not just in Nexora, but in myself. For staying the course, for drawing lines, for standing up even when the people closest to me pushed me down. I printed a new version of Grandpa's quote and framed it beside my desk. Trust is your most expensive tool. The original had faded over time, but its truth never had. It had been 3 months since Jacob's resignation and Amanda's fall from grace. 3 months since I chose to stop hiding. Nexora was thriving. Our AI healthcare system, Project Vega, had passed its 3rd clinical benchmark. A major European hospital network wanted exclusive rights. Clara and I had just wrapped our 5th investor pitch of the week, and our Series C funding round was almost oversubscribed. On paper, things were perfect, but beneath it all, a storm was brewing. It started with a phone call I didn't expect to take. "Julian Callahan," the woman asked. Her voice was calm but clipped. "Yes, speaking. This is Aaron from Northbridge Consulting. Your father is applying for an executive role with one of our tech clients. He listed you as a reference." My heart stopped. "My father," I repeated. "Yes, Mr. Leonard Callahan. He says you've collaborated before in leadership projects." I let out a laugh, sharp and humorless. "We haven't spoken in 9 years. Aaron hesitated. "So, you wouldn't recommend him?" I paused. Thought of the man who left when I was 14, who mocked every one of my early projects, who told me I'd end up homeless if I didn't man up and quit the nerd crap. "I wouldn't recommend him," I said flatly, "and if you hire him, tell your client to lock their servers." The past had this way of crawling back into your life when you least expected it. Amanda's texts kept coming shorter now, less hopeful, more like attempts to stay in orbit. The last one read, "They knew I messed up, but you were always the one they underestimated. Maybe that's why I couldn't stand it." Still, I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to go back there. Then came Thanksgiving. And for the first time in 5 years, I got a call from my mother. "I know we're not close," she began, her tone stiff, "but your sister's coming back for the holidays. Just thought you should know." "Why now?" Silence. "Moms." Then, because I saw your face in Times Magazine. The issue had named me Innovator of the Year. Apparently, now I mattered. I almost hung up. But something made me stay on the line. "Dinner's at 6, she added, then hung up. Clara raised her eyebrows when I told her. "You sure?" she asked, sipping her espresso. "No." "Then why go?" I thought about it for a long moment. Because I want them to see me for who I am. Not for revenge, just clarity. She smiled. "Then wear the blue suit." Walking back into that house felt surreal. The same oak staircase, same scent of lavender and lemon from the polished floors, but everything felt smaller now, like the house had shrunk, or maybe I'd just outgrown the version of myself they kept locked inside these walls. Amanda was already there. She looked tired. Her confidence had faded, replaced by something quieter. She nodded at me, a silent greeting. Mom hovered near the kitchen, adjusting platters no one asked her to fix. Dad wasn't there. No surprise. Richard, my brother-in-law, sat in the corner on his phone, probably live tweeting the turkey. I didn't say much. Until dessert? That's when it started. So, Julian, Richard said, his voice oozing curiosity. Still playing CEO of that startup? Amanda froze mid-bite. Mom blinked twice. I smiled. Actually, yes, Nexora just closed a $300 million round. We're expanding into Europe. Richard scoffed. Well, don't startups burn fast? One wrong step and poof. Amanda finally spoke. You know Nexora just signed with WHO, right? Richard looked confused. World Health Organization. I clarified. Our AI will assist with early cancer detection across 8 countries. The silence was delicious. Until Mom spoke. I just wish your grandfather could see it. He always said you were special with computers, even when we didn't understand. Her words were cautious, like a peace offering wrapped in bubble wrap. But I didn't flinch. He did see it, I said quietly. Everything I am now. He believed before anyone else did. Amanda looked away. I didn't push. That night, after the dishes were cleared and Mom pretended not to cry while washing plates, Amanda followed me to my car. She stood by the passenger door, arms crossed. I never told them about the interview. She said, they think I backed out. Why protect them? Because I already disappointed them. Twice would kill Mom. I leaned against the car, letting the cold settle between us. You're not the villain, Amanda, but you hurt me, and not just with the job. It was all those years before, too. She nodded. I know. I was so busy proving I was better. I didn't realize you were already great. That caught me off guard. I looked at her. For the first time, no armor, no sarcasm, no competition. Just my sister. I hope you find something that's yours. I said, maybe I already did. She replied, I'm starting a mentorship program for women in tech. No CEO title, just purpose. I smiled. Maybe we were both learning how to start over. A week later, Nexora made headlines again this time, not for tech. Our internal culture review revealed that only 17% of our leadership was women. I called Clara. Let's fix this, I said. How? Start with Amanda. Bring her on as a consultant. Let her build the mentorship pipeline. Clara hesitated. Are you sure? I nodded. I don't want a company that just reflects me. I want one that grows beyond me. Later that month, Jacob emailed me. No subject line. Just a one-sentence message. I was wrong. I never replied. Some wounds don't close, but that doesn't mean you keep picking at them. Amanda joined the team a month later, not in PR, not in fluff roles, but as an actual strategist. Quiet, focused, gritty in ways I hadn't seen before. At her first Nexora town hall, she stood beside me. She introduced herself, then said something that made Clara look up from her notes. I used to think tech belonged to people who shouted the loudest. Turns out, it belongs to those who do the work even when no one's looking. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. By New Year's Eve, Project Vega had surpassed early market projections. We flew to Geneva to finalize our partnership with WHO. I stood on that snowy balcony overlooking Lake Geneva, champagne in one hand and a glowing tablet in the other. Notifications rolled in. New contract signed. System approval confirmed. And a message from Amanda. Thanks for letting me try again. I typed one word back, earned. 3 months after Amanda joined Nexora, everything began to shift. Not just within the company, but in me. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything. Not to my family, not to Ethan, not even to the mirror. I had built an empire. Now, I needed to figure out what kind of legacy I wanted to leave behind. Our Geneva partnership turned into a global story. Nexora's name hit every major outlet: The Guardian, Financial Times, Bloomberg. AI in healthcare had officially gone mainstream, and we were at the center of it. Investors swarmed, competitors panicked, job applicants surged, but with success came pressure. And old shadows began to circle back. It started with a board member's question during a quarterly review. "Julian, what happens when you're not here?" I paused. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I'd never truly thought about it. For so long, Nexora had been my armor, my sword, my proof. Now it was something else, a living thing. And living things need to survive without their creator. That night, I sat alone in my office, the skyline of a foreign city glittering outside the window. Clara knocked once, then entered without waiting. "Deep thoughts," she said, handing me tea instead of coffee. She always knew. They asked about life after me. She raised a brow. "Planning your early retirement." I chuckled. Planning? For something bigger than myself. She sat across from me. "Serious now? Then you need to stop building it alone." 2 weeks later, I announced Nexora's first internal innovation incubator. We called it NextGen, a program designed to elevate junior engineers, coders, and thinkers into leaders, not just promote them, teach them, let them fail, then rise. Amanda spearheaded mentorship, Clara shaped policy. I stepped back intentionally. Watching them lead was terrifying and thrilling. Until something unexpected happened. Ethan sent me an email. Subject: "Can we meet?" No sarcasm, no false charm. Just a time and a location. A bookstore cafe we used to visit as kids. My first instinct was to delete it, but I didn't. He looked different, not humbled, just quieter, tired in a way I hadn't seen since we were both kids, racing bikes in the summer. He stood when I entered. "Thanks for coming," he said. I sat across from him, cautious but open. "I saw your WHO panel," he said after a while. "You weren't nervous at all." I just learned how to carry it." He nodded. "I guess that's something I never figured out." The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was old, familiar. Then, he slid a folder across the table. Inside a business proposal, a small AI analytics startup, focused on education systems, personalized learning algorithms. "This isn't a pitch," he said quickly. "I'm not asking for money, just insight. You built something. I want to build something, too, from scratch, right this time." I studied him. The hands that once pointed mockingly across a dinner table now trembled slightly as they pushed a vision forward. For the first time, he didn't want to compete. He wanted to create. I didn't promise funding, but I gave him feedback. "And my card?" "Not because you're my brother," I said. "Because you're finally acting like a builder." He didn't smile. But his eyes said more than his mouth ever could. Back at Nexora, Amanda stood at my office window, arms folded. "You met with him," she said. "You knew." Of course I knew. I was the one who told him about that bookstore. I shook my head. "You're becoming alarmingly good at this subtle manipulation thing." She laughed. "I had the best teacher." Weeks passed, then months. And slowly, something began to shift, not just in me, but in the family. Mom started texting more often. Nothing heavy, just pictures of her garden or baked bread with little captions like, "Looks like your scones, huh?" Richard stopped calling my company a startup. Even Mia started tagging Nexora in her posts professionally. Change didn't come with apologies. It came in behavior, and maybe that was enough. At Nexora's 5th-year anniversary gala, we held a private ceremony for the original core team, Clara. Jacob, yes, we made peace. After months of silence, he'd returned to apologize, and while trust was never fully restored, we found a way forward. He now ran a partner firm, contributing quietly. Amanda, of course. And me. As the lights dimmed, Clara raised a glass. To those who were once underestimated. Everyone laughed. Amanda leaned over, including by ourselves. I lifted my glass. To the late nights, the overlooked ideas, the quiet revenge that turned into purpose. Months later, I took my first vacation in 7 years. No phone, no emails, just me, a journal, and the mountains of Kyoto. On the last night, I wrote something that had been sitting in my chest for years. What I thought was revenge was actually recovery. I didn't need them to suffer. I just needed to stop suffering because of them. Back in the office, Clara greeted me with an envelope. Handwritten, inside was a letter from my father. No apology, was it the end? Just a note that said, I watched your TED Talk. I never understood your world, but I think your grandfather would be proud. I hope that means something. For the first time, it did. We launched Nexora Foundation in the spring. Amanda led it. Clara sat on the board. Its mission: provide coding scholarships and mentorship to underserved students. I made one rule: no nameplates, so nobody needed to know I started it. The work would speak louder than the name ever could. I stood outside our newest HQ in Toronto, looking at the etched glass door. It didn't say CEO. It just said, Julian Callahan, Builder. Exactly how I wanted to be remembered. Not for the title, but for the choice to build something better from the ashes of being ignored, for turning a coding hobby into a future, and for finally understanding being underestimated was never the problem. Believing it was, that's what I had to overcome. Story 3. I was 18 when I learned exactly where I stood in my family. It wasn't some dramatic blow-up or an emotional fight. No yelling, no broken plates, just an empty seat and a voicemail that changed everything. My name is Caleb Moreno, and this is how my parents skipped my high school graduation for a lie wrapped in glitter, all because my older brother was better at pretending to shine. The Jefferson High gym was packed, screaming families, paper banners, the air buzzing with Nebraska pride and cheap perfume. My classmates were clapping, crying, waving to relatives holding homemade signs. I stood near the bleachers, my honor cords heavy around my neck. I'd earned them 3.98 GPA, a full scholarship to Northern Tech, and more late-night study sessions than I could count. All I wanted was to see my parents in the crowd. Mom in her floral blouse, Dad with his old Nikon, maybe my little cousin grinning with a balloon. But as the names were called, and I stepped forward to shake the principal's hand, the spot where they should have been was just empty. No cheers, no photos, just silence. I walked off the stage alone, diploma case clenched so tight the plastic dug into my palms. They didn't come. Afterward, I called my mom. I thought maybe they were late. Maybe something happened. I wanted any excuse, anything that would make it make sense. She picked up, breathless, like she'd just ducked away from someone. Caleb, honey, she said, we're at Micah's benefit gala. It's really important. Micah, my brother. I blinked. Wait, you're not serious? A pause. Then she whispered, you're different. Caleb, you don't need the same things Micah does. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, she said quickly. We'll make it up to you. And then she hung up. Micah had always been the family favorite, tall, charming, and constantly reinventing himself. In high school, he was a basketball legend. In college, he dabbled in nonprofits and internships with vague titles. Lately, he'd claimed to be part of a tech startup focused on community outreach, but none of it ever added up. This gala, apparently, was honoring him for breakthrough leadership in urban development. I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't care, because while my parents sipped wine in a downtown ballroom, I walked 3 miles in full graduation gear to my best friend Ren's place. Ren lived with his mom in a quiet cul-de-sac. As soon as I knocked, she opened the door and saw my face. No questions, just a warm hug and, "Come in, baby, you're home now." That hug was the first thing that made me crack. I stayed there that night, curled on their couch, still in my gown. Everything felt hollow. Not just what happened, but what it confirmed. Years of being invisible. Years of being told to be understanding, while Micah got second and third chances. I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "You're different, just like my mom had." But it didn't hurt anymore. It burned. The next morning, Ren brought me pancakes and tried to lighten the mood. "Hey, they suck. You don't eat." I managed to smile, but my mind was spinning. I needed answers. Micah's story had always seemed too good to be true. A few months ago, I overheard him at a family dinner throwing around startup buzzwords, bragging about venture partnerships and impact investments. But he never mentioned a company name, so I pulled out my laptop and started digging. First, I searched for the gala itself. It was held at a flashy downtown venue, but the only article I found was a press release from an organization called Elevate Forward, a new nonprofit with no board members listed. The article called Micah a visionary leader, but didn't mention his actual job or contributions. Weird. Next, I checked the nonprofit's IRS filings. It had only existed for 6 months. Its website was bare bones, and its donation button linked to a personal PayPal account. Something was off. I kept digging, using domain lookups. I traced the Elevate Forward site to a developer Micah once worked with on a college club website. The whole thing looked thrown together professional enough to fool donors, but empty underneath. It was all smoke. The final straw was an internal event flyer that had leaked online. It showed Micah listed as a strategic visionary consultant, a title so vague it could mean anything or nothing. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. He wasn't being honored. He was running a show. And my parents had chosen that over my graduation. Ren leaned over, reading the article, so he faked it. "Not alone," I said. "He had help. From your parents?" I nodded. They weren't just ignoring me. They were part of the illusion. That night, I opened a fresh notebook and started writing everything down, not to vent, but to organize, to document, to build a case. Micah's vague resume, the fake nonprofit. My parents' complicity. I wasn't just angry. I was ready. I was done being quiet, done being polite. If the only way they'd see me was if I broke their illusion, then that's what I'd do. And I'd do it in the one way they never expected from the shadows. I posted a subtle update online, a photo of me in my gown, alone outside the gym, captioned, "Sometimes you realize your biggest achievement isn't graduating. It's surviving the people who didn't show up." It blew up. Messages poured in. "Same here." My parents skipped mine too. "Tell your story." So I did. Not all at once, hey. Just pieces, thread by thread. And the more I shared, the more people listened. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about finally being seen. The days after my post went viral were a strange blur. People who barely spoke to me in high school suddenly slid into my DMs. Teachers emailed me, some apologizing, some just curious. Even a few old church folks commented with "proud of you" emojis. Like that made up for years of sitting silently while Micah hogged the spotlight. But my parents' radio silence, and Micah, He posted a photo of himself shaking hands with the mayor, captioned, "True recognition doesn't require validation." I nearly choked on my cereal. I stayed at Ren's house longer than I meant to. His mom, Celia, made it clear I was welcome as long as I needed. But I wasn't just hiding anymore. I was working. My notebook was almost full. Names, dates, photos of Micah at events that made no logistical sense, like how he was supposedly in Denver for a summit the same weekend I found him tagged at a club downtown. He was lying, and lying well. But not well enough. I emailed Elevate Forward directly, pretending to be a journalist interested in writing a piece about young nonprofit leaders. Their reply was fast and sloppy. They said they'd pass along my request to Mr. Moreno's media team. There was no team. The email signature was just admin@elevateforward.org. No name, no title, not even a real phone number. I ran that email through a tracker. It was registered to Micah's college Gmail. One night, while Ren worked on a graphic design assignment in the living room, I sat hunched over my laptop, my screen glowing with screenshots. "What's the endgame?" Ren asked, glancing up. "Truth," I said. He nodded slowly. "And if they don't care?" That stopped me, because deep down, I already knew the truth might not bring them back. It might not change anything. But it would free me. The next morning, I got a message from someone unexpected. Eva Lynn, a girl from high school I barely knew. She was popular, ran student government, and dated football captains. But her message was different. "Hey Caleb, I saw your post. I was at the gala. I think I know what you're uncovering." My fingers froze over the keyboard. I wrote back. She replied within minutes. We agreed to meet at a campus cafe downtown. Ava arrived in a trench coat and sunglasses like we were in some spy movie. She slid into the booth and pulled out her phone. I was working at the gala. She said, interning for the event planner. She opened her gallery and showed me the seating chart. Next to Micah's name, Donor Tier Ambassador. I read aloud, "What does that even mean?" "Exactly." She said, "It's a fake title. He didn't donate. He didn't organize. He gave a speech that was barely 5 minutes long and read off a note app." Then she leaned in. "Caleb, it wasn't even Elevate Forward's event. It was rented space. Your parents covered the catering bill." My mouth went dry. "They funded the entire night just to have him look important." She nodded. "And now he's getting offers to speak at youth conferences. I saw one email. They think he's the next big voice for social entrepreneurship." I walked home from that cafe with Eva's screenshots burned into my brain. Everything made sense. My parents weren't just favoring Micah. They were building him from scratch, creating a persona, because Omaha loved a golden child, and if they had to fake one, so be it. They'd invested in Micah's image like it was a stock they refused to admit was tanking. That night, I sat down with Ren and showed him everything. He stared at my screen, shaking his head. "Dude, this is huge." "I'm going to post it," I said. "Not everything, just enough." "You sure?" I paused. "No, but I'm done being quiet." I drafted a thread titled, "My parents skipped my graduation to fund my brother's fake success. Here's the truth." In it, I laid out everything. I blurred names and redacted details to keep it safe, but the core was clear. Being a fake nonprofit, an event funded by our parents, a speech that led to real opportunities built on lies, and me, standing alone in my cap and gown while they clapped for the illusion. It spread faster than my original post. Comments flooded in. "You're not alone. This reminds me of my sister's wedding versus my college graduation. They chose status over you. That's on them." Some messages were brutal, others deeply kind. But one stood out. "Do you want to write about this for our online journal? We publish nonfiction essays from unheard voices. Your story matters." It was from a junior editor at Glasshouse Lit, a journal I'd admired since sophomore year. I said yes. My essay was titled Built in the Dark. I wrote about growing up in Micah's shadow, how my achievements were always nice, but never enough, how Omaha's obsession with public image had consumed my parents, how their love felt conditional, tied to how loud you could perform. But mostly, I wrote about standing alone, not just at graduation but through life. The essay got picked up for syndication, then featured in a Midwest writing showcase. And guess who texted me after? Not Micah, not my dad. But my mom. Her message read, "We saw your post. I'm sorry if you feel like we failed you. We just wanted the best for both of you. If you feel..." Those 3 words boiled my blood. Ren saw my face and knew. She didn't apologize. He said, "Nope. You going to respond?" I shook my head. She didn't reach out to heal. She reached out to manage the fallout. But someone else did reach out for real. Micah. He called late one night. I stared at the screen. My heart beat hard in my chest. I answered. "Hey," he said. Silence. Then they made me do it. I blinked. Do what? The gala, the speech, all of it? Mom said if I didn't go along, they'd cut me off. I was broke. Caleb, I didn't know what else to do. Part of me wanted to believe him. Another part didn't trust anything anymore. "You lied to everyone." I said. "I know. You let them skip my graduation." "I begged them not to," he whispered. "I swear, but they said it would look bad if they missed the gala. Said you'd understand." I laughed. They were right. I do understand. I understand exactly who they are. He didn't speak after that. Just a quiet, "I'm sorry," before hanging up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat back, looked at my messy notebook, and knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Because now I had the truth, and I was going to tell it properly. When the Glasshouse Lit essay went live, it didn't just make waves, it made ripples that touched people far beyond Omaha. Emails poured in, messages from college students, tired middle children, even teachers who said they'd shown the piece to their classes. "You put into words what I've never been able to say." One woman wrote, "Thank you for making me feel seen. It should have felt like closure, but it didn't. It felt like ignition. I didn't want just to share my story. I wanted to change the story people told about families like mine, about kids like me." Micah's call had left a sour taste. His apology felt hollow, like a Band-Aid on a broken window. He was sorry because his image was cracking, not because he understood. And my parents still silent? They weren't ashamed, just quiet, waiting for it to pass. But I wasn't done. I enrolled in a summer creative nonfiction course at Northern Tech before the fall semester started. I thought it would help sharpen my writing. Instead, I met someone who changed my direction completely. Her name was Harper, a junior with fiery red braids and a voice that didn't flinch. She read my essay the first week and said, "It's good, but you're still holding back." That caught me off guard. She leaned across the cafe table. "You wrote about being invisible, but now you're not. So what are you going to do with that visibility?" She was right. I'd gotten the spotlight. Now I had to use it. Harper invited me to join a student media collective. They ran podcasts, op-eds, videos, anything that amplified real stories. The night I pitched my first episode idea, the group listened in silence. "Call it family fiction," I said. "Each week, we pull apart one big lie families tell to survive. Mine just happens to be that my brother was a rising star." They nodded. One guy even whispered, "That's genius." And just like that, I became a host. Recording that first episode was terrifying. I sat in a tiny soundproof booth, a mic an inch from my lips, Harper across from me, signaling to speak. My name is Caleb Moreno. I began, and this is the story of how my parents threw a party for my brother's made-up career instead of showing up to my real graduation. I didn't need to perform, I just told the truth. The rawness was its own power. The podcast exploded. Thousands of downloads in a week. Social shares, DMs from people saying, "You made me cry in the car." One message came from a nonprofit watchdog group called Grant Shield. They asked if I'd ever looked into Elevate Forward's donation records. I hadn't, but now I would. With their help, I found out that most of the donations listed on the gala site came from the same 2 credit cards, both in my parents' names. And the board members, all fake, some were dead, one was a dentist who'd never heard of them. It wasn't just a fake event, it was a fake organization. And legally, that mattered. Grant Shield passed the file to a local investigative reporter. A few weeks later, Omaha's biggest paper published a feature. The Family Facade, how a local couple fabricated a nonprofit to launch their son's career. I didn't write the piece. I didn't have to. My podcast and Glasshouse essay were cited as source material. The reporter did the rest. Micah's face was on the front page. My parents' names were listed in the financial records. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. A still kind of power. The kind you get when you finally stop begging to be seen and start showing people where to look. Micah texted again, "Why would you do this to us?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, "I didn't do this to you. I did this for me." He didn't reply, but 2 days later, Sarah, his ex-girlfriend, sent me a message. She'd moved to Chicago, started over. She said she listened to every episode of the podcast, that it helped her grieve what she thought was a real relationship. He used me too. She wrote, "I just didn't want to believe it." She wasn't angry, she was relieved. So was I. Back at Northern Tech, I got invited to speak at a youth journalism summit. A full panel, on stage, bright lights. I told the story not as a victim but as a voice. Afterward, a teenager in the front row approached me. She looked like she hadn't said a full sentence all day. But she handed me a sticky note that said, "You made me want to write, thank you." I stuck it in my journal. It's still there. I went back to Omaha once. Not to visit my parents, but to speak at the local library, the same one I used to sit in after school while Micah got driven to training. The event was small, mostly students, a couple of teachers, one librarian I remembered from middle school. As I stood at the podium, I saw Celia Wren's mom smiling in the back. She'd brought cookies. Afterward, she hugged me and said, "Told you, baby, you had something the world needed." That night, I walked past my childhood house. The porch light was on, but the yard looked smaller, sadder. The curtains twitched. I didn't stop. They knew I was in town. They didn't reach out. And I was okay with that, because here's what no one tells you about finally being seen. It doesn't erase the years you weren't, but it makes the future louder. Now I had a team, a mic, and a mission. Our podcast's tagline was simple. We tell the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. And the truth. I was never just the quiet kid. I was the storyteller they underestimated. And I was just getting started. It's strange how life keeps moving even when the truth lands like a meteor. The article exposing my parents and Micah had been out for weeks. The local news ran it on evening broadcasts. My podcast's listenership tripled. Strangers stopped me at coffee shops. Not because I was famous, but because I was honest. Omaha couldn't ignore what they saw now. And my parents, they vanished from the social scene. First Baptist removed their names from the church board. Their friends quietly stepped away. Their perfect world of fundraisers and fake smiles gone. Still, they hadn't reached out, and I didn't expect them to. But one day, a letter came. No return address, just a small, neat envelope postmarked from Lincoln, Nebraska. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. Caleb, I read everything, and I'm sorry. You were always the strong one. I was too scared to be honest. I let them build something fake out of me because I didn't know how to be real without their approval. But you were real the whole time. They never deserved you. Micah. I stared at the letter for a long time. Not because it fixed anything, but because for the first time in years, my brother had spoken to me without a script. At school, the podcast kept growing. Harper and I launched a new series called The Quiet Ones, dedicated to voices buried by family politics and school favoritism. Our third episode featured a girl who'd been kicked out of her house for coming out as queer. The next week, a foster youth talked about living in 6 homes by the time he was 17. Every single one of them said the same thing. I thought I was the only one. And that's when I realized my story was just a door, a way in. But the room, it was full of people who had been silenced for too long. Meanwhile, I started working on a memoir, not to capitalize, but to finally put it all in one place. I called it All the Seats Were Taken, a reference to the empty chairs at my graduation and the way my family always seemed to reserve their attention for someone else. An independent publisher picked it up by winter break. Suddenly, I was booking interviews, panels, even virtual classroom visits where students had read my story for homework. And every time, I ended with the same message. You're not invisible, you're not crazy, and you're not alone. Then, in the middle of February, I got an unexpected email. From my dad, subject line family, Caleb, we made mistakes, but airing it all publicly, that was a betrayal. Your mother cries every night, you've ruined Micah's reputation, and you've made us look like fools. It's time to stop. Come home. Let's handle this like adults. Dad, I read it twice, then a third time. No apology, no ownership, just guilt-laced control. I didn't reply. But I did mention it briefly in a Q&A at one of my campus events. Someone had asked, "What do you say to people who accuse you of tearing your family apart?" And I answered, I didn't tear anything down. I just stopped pretending the house was still standing. The audience clapped, but what mattered more was how free I felt saying it. Spring came fast. The podcast won a Student Media Award. Harper and I were invited to keynote a youth storytelling summit in Michigan. Before we left, I had dinner with Ren and his mom, Celia. They'd become my real home. Celia passed me a gift wrapped in an old newspaper. Inside was a new notebook, hard leather, the pages blank and waiting. She said, "You write the truth, Caleb. That's rare. Don't stop." The last thing I did before leaving Omaha that semester was visit the old gym at Jefferson High. It was quiet, bleachers folded, dust dancing in the light. I stood on the same spot I had during graduation. Alone then, empowered now, I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of the stage. Then I posted it with one line, "Some stages are meant to be reclaimed." It went viral again. And this time, no backlash, no drama. Just recognition. Months later, I got one more letter. This one was typed, "From the Attorney General's Office of Nebraska." An investigation had been formally opened into Elevate Forward and its misuse of charitable funds. I wasn't the target. But I was listed as a contributing witness. I called the number on the letter and asked if Micah would be charged. The woman on the line said, "That depends on whether he cooperated or not." I never found out what happened. I didn't need to. That part of the story wasn't mine anymore. Now I live in Chicago. Still writing, still recording. The podcast has a new team, new stories. But every once in a while, I check the old posts, the comments, the DMs from people like the kid who said, "Your story helped me walk out of a toxic house." I keep every message because they remind me that truth is more contagious than lies. And resilience, it's louder than applause. I still have the photo Sarah gave me at 15 mid-speech at a debate tournament. It sits on my desk beside Celia's notebook and the little sticky note from the teen who said I made her want to write. My real family, the one I chose, is still around. Ren now teaches art in a public school. Harper runs her own media studio. Micah, I don't know. We haven't spoken since that letter, and that's okay. Some stories don't end with reunions. Some end with peace. And mine ends with me in a studio, putting on my headphones, watching the recording light turn red, and saying, "This is for every kid left in the shadow, every name skipped over, every truth hidden under a smile." Your story matters, and I'm here to help you tell it.